Amazing. You came up with this term slut. What was the purpose of using that word, slut?
Well, if you look in the dictionary, the definition of a slut, right? It starts out and it says a woman that, right? It's promiscuous, has a lot of sexual partners, but it never says a person that. It only says a woman.
I've never looked that word up, so I can't confirm or deny.
Yeah.
But it does say a woman.
Oh, also promiscuous as well. Promiscuous as a woman that. So what happens is that men can go out and be sexually liberated and have a bunch of women, but if a woman does it, there's all these derogatory labels that come with that, which is an extreme form of bullying for us. I embrace the derogatory labels and give women confidence.
And what do you mean by you embrace it?
I would refer to myself as a slut.
Oh.
So basically, it's really what people think about you. It's not really actually what they know, right? So I could, I went through a divorce, and then I started dating after that. And it's like, well, if going out on a date with a guy makes me a slut, then that's just what I'm gonna be.
I don't think going out on a date make you a slut, but having sex with different men makes you a slut.
Well, what does it make you if you have sex with different women?
A slut maker.
A slut maker. Oh, wow.
You know,
Niggas. For sure. You know what I'm saying?
Stop.
I don't like that shit.
For sure, bro.
I don't like that shit.
You say in your book, there is no history of the black man settling down with one woman
Right.
and never desiring to have another. Before
Right.
slavery, during slavery, or after slavery,
That's
the black
just the
man
truth.
has never been recorded to have just one woman.
Right. Well, I think there's some actual facts we can look at on that. Monogamy has failed for the white man in America.
But this is like saying it's okay.
It's not me saying it's okay. This is how they're living. I'm giving you the history of what their life is. Black men haven't been waiting on me to tell them it's all right to have more than one woman. Neither have white men. This is just what they do. I'm not talking about fornication and adultery. I'm not talking about one-night stands and running around rampant with other women. That's not the kinds of, when I say more than one woman relationship. I mean that before we came to America, our men had more than one wife and family. And we were satisfied with it because we had not met the monogamy idea. We had not met the American white woman who, insists on certain kinds of values in her man. We had not learned envy and jealousy. All right, after coming here, those kinds of ideas were bred into us because of society and the mores that the Americans made up here. And so then we started to have problems with that. But I think that since it is apparent that most of them, not all of them, it's certainly up to the man, do love more than one woman. I got tons of mail. A lot of black men write and tell me that they have had two women for 5, 10, 15, and 20 years, and they can't even get the women to speak to each other. Sometimes they have two families,
Would I
two
want
sets of
to, but
children.
Sharazod, would I want to talk to a woman who's sharing perhaps the bed and the money and the social life with who I would deem as my man?
If you want to deal in reality, and if you are not insecure, and if you don't think that that robs you of something, you would want to know them. If he loves her, you certainly should want to know her.
There are a lot of black women out there who say,
Oh, I know
"Sister,
they're mad about that idea. I understand,
That
And
would
that's
never
not
hold
easy.
water.
Wait a minute, that's not easy. And that's a frightening thought to most of us. And I don't like that. I'm not for that. I'm in agreement with everybody else. Our men ought to just have one woman. But that is not the reality. I'm trying to get us to deal with some reality for a change. Stop dealing with fantasy. Stop dealing with television. Stop dealing with imagination of how we wish things were. Let's deal with them how they are, what it is, present tense. And
but
if we
because
deal
that's
with that,
happening
then
doesn't mean I have to like that or
no,
want
that
to
means
accept
that you can live in hell. That means you can live in doubt. That means that you can always be checking on your man. That means that you can be insecure and be, tearful. And that means you can be disappointed when you find out the real truth. And you don't want to have that in your life. None of us do. But in order not to have that, then we have to deal with some reality and recognize that men are not limited in the way that women are. Men are able to love more than one woman. I'm not talking about, as I said, just a random sexual relationship of fornication and adultery and all of that. I mean that there are many black men who have children by more than one woman. What is to become of those children? They need their father.
But if
to
you would
express
cheat
our
on me
dissatisfaction.
or walk out
well,
on me.
see, that's what I'm saying. We have to get into definition. Who told us that was cheating? Where did that idea come from that that's cheating? And I'm not saying that a lot of men are not just running around. I'm not talking about that. But if a woman finds out that her man has been with a woman while she's been with him for 3 or 4 or 5 years, that's a serious commitment and relationship. And if it hasn't taken anything from me, if I'm not going short of anything, and if this is what he thinks his responsibility is, then what kind of hell are you going to go through to prevent that? Since we cannot stop him, we have not been successful. The white woman has not been successful in stopping the white man from having another woman. They call them a mistress. We pick up a lot of that terminology. But a man who has 2 women, that's not necessarily a mistress. That's just his other woman. Now, we got 2 choices. We can be the woman or the other woman. We don't have but those 2. Now, I know we don't like that. I don't like that, you know. But that's the reality of our life at some point. Now, it's up to the man.
But what
Every
about-
man doesn't want 2
what
women,
about-
but those that
what
do, they're
about our
going to do it.
morals and our religion?
Whose religion? Whose morals? Not our religion, because we're not practicing the religion of black people anymore. That was taken from us. We don't have our morals anymore. That was taken from us. So whose idea are you representing when you stand up for those values? Not ours.
The 5 benefits of polygamy. Jessie Lee Peterson and Amber Rose, I'm not a big fan of them. But that statement that he made to Amber Rose is so true. It is so different when a female is just out there, and it's different. I always thought to myself, thank God I didn't have to see different men jumping up and down on top of my mama, telling me she's dating. Because I know if she's dating, she's on the carousel. She's in some sausage party. I knew that. As a young man, I knew that. And I always tell my daughters, if these guys ain't committing to you, then you letting these guys just have fun with you. There's an old saying about the lock and key. Any key that can open a crappy lock, which is a woman, is a terrible lock. Okay? So happy that I didn't have to deal with my mama having boyfriends. I don't think many boys want to deal with that. But you know what? Polygamy is already here. Now, we don't call it polygamy. It's a pseudo-type. It's not really polygamy. It's pseudo-type polygamy. But I'll get into that later in the video. There's a Bible verse, Isaiah 4:1. And it says, in that day, so many men will be left that 7 women will fight for 1 man, saying, let us marry you. We will provide our own food and clothing. Only let us have your last name, so we will be not mocked as old maids. In Japan, I've heard that they have these women, I forget the name of them, but they're just throwaway women. You know, and anybody has a mother or daughter or sisters, we don't want to see our females in our lives talking about their dating forever. Number 1 benefit of polygamy. This is in no particular order. In polygamy, you get a man who's responsible to you. You see, boyfriends usually do not have responsibility to you. You have a committed person to you when they take you on as a wife. Whether it's legal, meaning a judge or somebody signed off on it, or whether it's the commitment to the person. There's some animals out there that won't have sex unless the male person has made a home. Now, if an animal has that much sense, then in my opinion, some females should have that much sense. If I were a woman, it would be very important to me to look for a man that can have my back, that can secure me. I'm gonna give you a couple of numbers really quick. The numbers play into having somebody responsible for you. Nobody has to die alone if polygamy exists. In 2020, only about 30% of African Americans were married. And about half of people have never been married. African Americans have never been married. 34% of all Americans. According to Black Demographics and the Census Bureau, 50% of these African Americans have never been married. This is important also. Median income. Median income for all women in the United States is $42,000. For African American women, it's $36,000. Can you imagine? Just think of your hand and everybody separated. All your digits are separated and you ball your hand up. That's powerful. Working as a team. Usually in polygamous marriages, people work as a team. In the last few decades, marriage has been on the decline. There was a time before the 1970s, African Americans were married well above white Americans. Now, those numbers have declined drastically in the Black community. I'll give you some stats that I've been looking at. From the Journal of Marriage and Divorce concludes that 70% of married Americans at least cheat once in their lifetime. According to the General Social Society, 20% of men cheat compared to 13%. According to LA Detective Agency, their numbers are higher. 30 to 60% of married couples will cheat at least once in the marriage. 74% of men and 68% of women in the same study admitted that they cheat if they were guaranteed they wouldn't get caught. 60% of these affairs start with close friends and coworkers. And the average affair lasts about 2 years. The crazy thing is about 70% of marriages break up as a result of an affair being discovered. So when I talk about polygamy, pseudo-polygamy is people are already sharing. People are already, think about a guy who goes into a relationship with a woman with a couple of baby daddies or even one child, a little boy, let's say, for instance, and he has to see this little boy grow up and not look like him, but look like his father. So he has to look at the father all the time, or a couple of kids. Now, if that isn't a form of polygamy, I don't know what is. Now, this stuff isn't easy to listen to, but I'd rather give you the ugly truth than a beautiful lie. The thing about polygamy is this, that I've always had a difficult time with, we accept so many different types of relationships. You accept asexual relationships where people just aren't even having sex, they're just together. Both people don't like it. You have all sexual, allosexual. You have open relationships. You have independent relationships. You have codependent relationships. You have chameleon relationships. Chameleon relationships are kind of funny because these are people who may not be happy in the relationship, but because they like the person, they will be someone else. Because this guy may be in a relationship with a woman and may not even like kids, but he's someone else just to be in the relationship. You have a dominant and submissive relationship. You have toxic relationships. You have rebound relationships. And most of these relationships are monogamous. You got relationships with those rebound relationships where one person dumps the other, so they resort to the person they were with or a new person. all of these relationships are acceptable. People don't have to get married. People don't have to commit to one another, but those relationships are acceptable. You see, it's commendable when a young man says, I'm going to be responsible for 2 or 3 wives, versus a boyfriend showing up at your house saying he's just dating your daughter. Or the same situation can apply to your mother. Who would want their mother on the carousel? Who would want their mother dealing with different men all the time? Actually, I truly believe some men who have seen this, it has had a negative effect. Because like I said before, no boy wants to see different men jumping up and down on their mother or think that's going on. Many people say they are monogamous, but they're not. So many people are having affairs. That's not a monogamous relationship. So the idea that we are really practicing monogamy in the United States is an allegory. It is a misconception. And most of the time, it's just simply not true. We're not practicing monogamy more likely than most. You see, this is one of the problems. Family is really no longer celebrated like it used to be. There are people who are thrown under the bus because they talk in terms of a traditional family. Families are no longer a priority. A father in the home is no longer a priority. There's not even any shame to it. And then there's many women who are ostracized just for being a sweet, delicate, submissive wife. But you know what's funny to me? Today, you can go out and you can have 1,000 wives, right? You can go out and one at a time, right? Marry a woman, separate, divorce, marry another one, separate, marry, divorce, separate, not together. There's no problem with that. There's no problem with that. You can have children all over the place. Nobody says nothing. Nobody says nothing. However, as long as these situations are consecutive, they're fine. When they become concurrent, it's a problem. You know, this polygamy it's more in line with natural male behavior. Women have the same story. You talk to a woman, it's like God gave them a memo and said, say this to men. It was him. It was them. It wasn't me. That's why we're not together. And many times you'll hear that same, so he cheated on me. He cheated on me. You get women who'll go, I want to be 6'7", for instance. Let's say you're 6'1", you want to be 6'7". You've never seen anybody after a certain age grow, or very few people, or if they have a sickness, that pituitary gland sickness, be something or see something that's impossible, like a pink elephant or a pink dog. Even though I haven't seen a pink dog, I want one. You see, that's a woman's mindset. Even though I want a man that has never cheated on me, I've never seen that. And you got old women still talking like that. They would be better off getting with a man who's polygamous, who would have their back when they get old. But no, there's something to be said about women in romance novels and women in fantasies maybe, just maybe, women like romance novels because they believe in fantasy more than they believe in reality. I think about so many men that have multiple baby mothers. So many men. And if they would have practiced polygamy from the start, they would probably be with all their baby mothers. Polygamy helps reduce the cases of cheating within the household. Studies show that men with more wives are simply more loyal. These guys who are in polygamous, think about it like this. Say you have a daughter, for instance, and she's 24 years old. Young man comes up and says, hey, I want to take on another wife. Chances are for a young man, let's say he's 26 years old, 28 years old, for him to even speak those words, that speaks volumes. First of all, a guy has to have something going on internally to even be able to say that. Now, certainly there are some guys out here who want to be polygamous and are broke and aren't secure. But generally, a guy to come up to a father and say that, oh, he's going to be prepared. And he probably has his life together. A young man whose mind is gone and he's trying to sleep with everything, he doesn't have the ability to say that to a father. It just isn't there. Having one wife creates a condition for temptation in reference to men's physiology. Polygamy can help solve some of this. It simply reduces the number of unmarried women and unwanted women in society. And it also increases income. It brings hope to single women. If polygamy was enthusiastically welcomed and promoted and accepted, the number in our society of unmarried women would be less. We all know the problems most unmarried women face, from finance to being by themselves, or just constantly going on that constantly chain of men giving them false promises. If you are a woman and you listen to this, think about it. Think about your own life. And think about that old pink elephant that I saw, that I didn't see, that women believe it's gonna happen. I'm gonna give me a man that, Polygamy provides social stability. It reduces poverty levels and rebuilds community. It gives men stronger family ties. It gives women stronger family ties. It supports a network of other women to depend on to help with the children. For instance, working parents are forced to take the children to daycare, which means they end up getting outside support. Nothing is greater than a big family that loves each other. Nothing is more healthier than that for the women and for the men. From a religious perspective, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism talks about marriage is a covenant between two people. It doesn't say you have to have go to a judge and everything. And all of these religions support polygamy. There's an old saying, please show me in the Bible where where God condemns polygamy or say polygamy isn't practiced. And there's so many people in the Bible that's been involved in polygamy. Many people confuse marriage with a license. There are some people who think the wedding makes people married. And probably in God's eyes, if you're religious, than it does. But then how the state looks at it is, then it has to be legalized. Most people who get married have to still go and submit the marriage certificate to a judge to make it legal in the United States and many countries. The whole idea of marriage is to take you from one authority, from a legalized standpoint, which is God, and place marriage into another authority, which is the government. That's all a marriage license is. A government authority, a legal contract. Unfortunately, it becomes less important to people, the covenant that you either promise to that person or the covenant that you promise to God. What were people doing when people were jumping the broom? They didn't have a contract. They didn't have a judge, but it was still their husband. The Quran and the Bible talks about great men in both of those texts. Abraham had more than one wife. Jacob had more than, David had more than one wife. Solomon had more than one wife. Muhammad had more than one wife. God didn't condemn or punish any of these men for practicing polygamy. In fact, in the Quran makes it very clear how many wives you can have. If God had placed several Eves to the Garden of Eden, some people say, well, Adam didn't have an opportunity. But if there were more women in the Garden of Eden, if there was a so-called Garden of Eden, I'm not trying to, he would have married all of them. It was in biblical times, it was common in custom to marry more than one wife at a time. Moses had 2 wives. He even in Deuteronomy 21:1-17, it talks about him also having captured prisoners of conquest, which made provisions to continue the family line. Marrying the brother's wife when he died. Samuel had more than one wife. So the list goes on, and you guys have always heard about Solomon having like 300 wives and 700 wives and 300 concubines. Number 2, men who are married have a deep sense of responsibility to their wife. If you ever talk to a polygamous guy or see a polygamous guy, these men feel they have a huge responsibility to these wives in general. When a man is polygamous, studies show that women generally compete to keep you happy. Men also had a responsibility at once to marry prisoners of men who had died in war or reduce the poverty levels and rebuild communities. Although the context is different from our present world, there is no doubt that polygamy provides social stability. Women involved in polygamy also benefits from this lifestyle. They have company of other women. Young women could reduce the burden of older women, which goes into number 3, which is post-retirement care. If a woman is in a house with other women and there are maybe older women, or a woman gets sick, if there are 3 women in the house and a man, she has a family that is responsible to take care of her. In polygamy, generally women are more valued. Look at a polygamous guy and look, he appreciates his wives way, just on a different level than monogamous guys do. And look at all these problems, all these, just even Adam in the Garden of Eden, that was a monogamous relationship. And look at all the problems that come out of that. All the problems we hear about, people having in relationships, most of those problems are from polygamous relationships. Number 3, and I kind of infuse this into number 2, but just post-retirement care. If polygamy has many descendants and you have children in the house and the children feel like that's my other mother, they're more likely to look out for you. You ever go or see an old folks home? Some of those people don't have any family. A good husband does his best to prepare for post-retirement care. A good husband. He has a mindset of building something together and should infuse that mindset into his wives if he is a good husband. Number 4, men with more than one wife are usually responsible, highly driven, ambitious, successful, and usually, and not in all cases, but usually they have sufficient income to take care of more than one wife. Studies also show that men who are polygamous are more calm, less aggressive, and more romantic than men who have one wife. And number 5, and we kind of talked about this before, men who are polygamous are less likely to cheat. It reduces the risk of sexual transmitted diseases when men are less likely to cheat. I will say this again. Most marriages in the United States, men are cheating. That's just the truth. That's the truth. And like I've said before, you can't base that on your preacher or a politician or a brother-in-law or somebody who has an incentive to keep the truth away from you. When you see men in the raw, and they have nothing to hide, you know this is pretty much true. It's just men's nature. And only 3% of mammals are, together for life. So nature, you can look at nature and you can kind of see the same thread. Given the opportunity, I think most men, given the opportunity, meaning, you'll hear guys go, well, I don't want but one woman. Then they start talking about the problems. This is the same mindset of people who stay single. They stay single because of the problems or the fear. Or they just want to just live their life and be with multiple people anyway. So you guys be like, these guys, I don't want no wife because of the problems. I don't want no wife. I don't like being with more than one at a time. This guy been with 100 women, so he just wants to be with people one at a time. But that doesn't mean he doesn't want to be with multiple people. It is super interesting to hear guys talk about problems before they talk about the benefits.
I want to be the man in your life.
Well, I don't want to be with nobody. Too much drama or coming from a negative perspective on how the relationships will be. I can't control the one I got. That kind of stuff. However, for the women, guys, women always say, when you look at any polls or anything, they'll always say,
never hate you.
What is important to them. And really, usually in the top 5, Women always go, don't lie. I don't like dealing with no liar. But that's how men are living in general, especially in the United States. Men live in lies, they sneak around. They, even if they've done it one time, it's still, it still hadn't been monogamous. They have these refractionary periods. Well, I'm monogamous now. Well, I hope that you guys, took something away from this. And thank you for listening.